and welcome to the Strongest Steel podcast. I'm Scott Lunny. I'm the director for District 3 of the United Steelworkers. I use the pronouns he and him, and we are recording today in the district office, Brett's office, but it is on the traditional and unceded territory of Coast Salish people, the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And I'm really excited. We have two special guests, foreigners that are here in our district to talk about organizing. We have Maria Somma, who heads the organizing department for the Steelworkers International, and Mariana Padias, who is the assistant director.
Assistant director.
Assistant. You don't have to say assistant to the director.
No, that's a district director.
That's a district, because in the district you are definitely the assistant to the director. You're not the assistant, but you're the assistant director.
Assistant director of organizing.
See, that's good. When I was the assistant to the director, I was told you got to be the assistant to the director.
And to top that off, in Pittsburgh, we have assistants to the office of the president. Yeah. And assistance to the president.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, that's a whole other podcast. This one, we're going to talk about organizing. So I'm very happy that you're here. And so welcome to District 3 and welcome to the Strongest Steel podcast. We will just start and I will let you both tell everybody who you are and why we need to listen to you about organizing.
Great.
So start with Maria.
Okay. Who am I? Thanks for having us here. We really appreciate it. And we're here in District 3 and just thrilled to be here working with our siblings in the district. Again, my name is Maria Somma, and I am the Director of Organizing. I've had the privilege of being the director for the last 10 years, but I've been with the union for 24 years, and my entire adult life I've been an organizer. So over 30 years as a union organizer, and before that I was a community organizer for a number of years. So
awesome.
Is that enough?
So we need to listen to you about organizing, okay?
I wish.
Mariana?
Yeah, this is my 15th year with the union, and my first 9 years was as an attorney for District 12 mainly, and I've been Maria's assistant for the past 6. But before coming to the union, I had been a community organizer in college, and a union organizer right out after college, and then I was able in law school to do some work with organizing campaigns, including the USW's car wash campaign in Southern California, and have just been really happy to be able to work in the organizing department and help grow our union and to be here in District 3.
Awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. And so as I always say, we've had a couple other lawyers on the podcast before, but you're a good lawyer. So just so everybody knows, a good lawyer.
And more like a lapsed lawyer.
Yeah. So I said that to the Premier of British Columbia because he's a lawyer. And I said, but you're a good lawyer. He was looking out for people that need to be looked out for, not looking out for corporations.
That's
and
right.
Stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We need good lawyers.
Okay. So one of the things that I know, we get to talk about, or I get the privilege of hearing about when I go to the International Executive Board is, the overall, organizing program of the International and strategic organizing, which I know we're bringing into District 3. But, what does that mean? Like, what do we mean, like, when we're talking about strategic organizing and what we're trying to do as a union with our organizing program?
I'm so glad you asked. When we talk about strategic organizing, I hearken back to the past of our union. When our union was created, and for many decades, we really were the union in steel and the union in aluminum and anything dealing with metal, iron ore, all of that. We were the union in it. And as the years have progressed, right, that footprint in those industries and those sectors have shrunk due to a lot of trade policy, at least in the U.S., that really offshored some of that product, but more importantly, really the allowed a lot more imports in, And so during that time when we were seeing the mills be affected by bad trade policy in the 80s and early 90s, the union really had to take a look at where we could build some other strengths. And so when we look at strategic organizing, it is thinking through, right, where can we build strength? Where can we have enough density to be able to affect a sector, an employer, or, in my dreams, an entire industry? And so when we think about strategic campaigns or strategic organizing, we really want to go back and say, where is it that this union wants its growth? And where this union exists, how do we increase that strength in that sector or in that employer so that we're giving our members the best opportunity in which to be able to do better bargaining, give them some more strength at the table. So we look at that. Who do we represent already in when we're thinking about strategic organizing? We look at, are there more employers in the sectors where we already represent workers, if not of that employer, but another employer in that sector? And then the third area that we begin to look at is, where is the future growth of work? And that's very important for us. And so looking at all three of those areas, we want to make sure that whatever resources that our members have given us through their dues, that we're using it properly in order to build real strength that will help our members and our union to be able to provide better service for our members. So that's the way I view strategic organizing. I don't know, Mariana, if you want to add anything?
I mean, I'll add, I think it's thinking through how we use our resources to best influence improvements for our existing members. And I would say, working with Local 1944 and its members this week and seeing them when they make that connection between not just organizing, because a lot of our members think it would be great if more people had a union contract, but when they make the connection about how it can actually make their own contracts stronger and improve their position with their employer, and seeing that connection be made, it just really makes a lot of sense, and I think we've seen it work.
Yeah, and that's great. And I think we're doing a disservice to folks that we organize if we're not doing it in a way that we're fairly confident that we can get them a good collective agreement and we can really deliver on what the promise is, which is to get a good collective agreement and make their wages and working conditions better. And if we're not strategic about who we organize, unfortunately, we sometimes end up in situations where we can't deliver on that. We can't deliver a good contract. We can't deliver the kind of service that we want to be able to deliver to workers. So it's, it's making sure we're doing what we can do for those workers, and then also making sure we're doing what we can do for the union as a whole to build power and to be able to help our existing members. So what are some examples? I know you've got some great examples. We hear about them at the International Executive Board. But we have some examples, and I know, that maybe like I think about the University of Pittsburgh, which I know you like to talk about. But like, how is that an example of strategic organizing? No, and I think it's more than just the numbers, because there's big numbers there, but there's other reasons why that's a strategic organizing target that we've been successful at.
I'm going to go all the way back and talk a little bit about how we even got to the University of Pittsburgh. Yeah. So as you know, our headquarters are in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And at one time, and our headquarters are there, and at one time, we had hundreds of thousands of members in that region. And we're situated in Allegheny County. And as the mills started shutting down, new industry and new professions came into the city of Pittsburgh. What I always say, our new economic powerhouses in that region that was once steel mills is now universities of higher education or institutions of higher education. We have many universities in a very small geographic location. Carnegie Mellon University, we've got Carlow University, Chatham University, and the big dog in that area is the University of Pittsburgh. And so the University of Pittsburgh and the healthcare institutions that emanated from the university called UPMC, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. They are the two largest employers in that region. They are actually, UPMC, the hospital system there, is actually the largest employer through that half of the states. Of the state, Pennsylvania. They have bought up so many health systems. So our economic engine in that region now are eds and meds. They're medical centers and hospitals and institutions of higher learning. I say they're the steel mills of today. They are that economic engine. So I say all that just to give the history. About 5 years ago, adjunct professors. And if you're out there paying for your kid's school, if your kid's lucky enough to get to college, I'm going to say that your child is probably being taught by an adjunct professor. What is an adjunct professor? It's someone who's not a full-time professor, has lower pay than most faculty members, and has no benefits. And they make up 2/3 of the workforce in academia. So they're likely being taught by an adjunct part-time professor with no benefits, getting paid a lot less. Your tuition keeps going up, but their pay did not. So anyway, in this eds and meds economy that exists in our region, which was like almost all other employers trying to get the best bang for their buck. And so they could, as low as they could go and pay for workers, right, they would go. And so what we've got is a couple of adjuncts from Duquesne University who came over and wanted to meet and said, we want to organize. We want to organize with the steelworkers. And I said, oh, no, we don't do that. That's not us. We don't do that. Why would we do that? Go to the American Federation of Teachers or the National Education Association. We don't do that. So they said, okay. So they left and they came back and they said, well, you know what? We met with that union, and we really want you to take a look at us. And I said, we don't organize college professors. We don't have a contract in it. Go to the NEA. They came back a third time and said, we've met with both unions, you've told us now, and we still want steelworkers. And I was like, all right, let's do this, right? Let's see if we can think about creating, being able to provide a good contract. That was really my hesitancy, was can we do a contract for professors? And then when I got involved with that is when I began to realize the life of an adjunct professor and understanding that they are the second largest employer in that county. And they had 2/3 of their workforce being temporary workers. So looking at that and said, well, adjuncts can't afford to have just one job. Every adjunct I spoke to had 3 jobs. They were with 3 different schools. So for us to figure out, well, if we change one school, that doesn't really affect a worker. It doesn't really lift any of their living ability, conditions, et cetera. So if we're going to do this, we have to take a look at the sector. And how do we take a look at the sector and how do we improve workers' lives? Because if we did it just in one school, it didn't do it. We had to go to 3 schools. So we began with the metropolitan approach and we organized, we won Duquesne University, although the board took that victory away from us. Then we organized Point Park University. Then we organized Robert Morris University. And then we were ready and had experience. We knew we could get a contract and we knew that we could organize adjunct professors. So then we decided we're going to take a look at the big dog, the University of Pittsburgh, which had thousands of employees in there. So, and so we did. That's how we got to that. But the approach we took was a strategic approach that says the University of Pittsburgh has many bargaining units in which for us to go after. We got started with faculty, and then we said, oh, well, there are graduate employees there, and there are staff people there. So we did this approach by 3 different units over a period of 5-6 years. We were able to bring in first the faculty, which was 3,300, over 3,000. Then we just won the staff campaign, which was 6,100 workers. And then we just finished last year with the graduate employees, which brought in another 2,100. And we represent adjunct faculty in the other places, and we have 2 other staff campaigns going on. Now, what we're doing is in the strategy behind higher ed, but we can, because we represent those thousands of people now, really be an economic influence in that region, in that county. And when you talk about improving workers' lives as a whole, when you control the economy or the economic engines around that, that's really helping workers all over. A rising tide lifts all boats in that area. I'm sorry that was long, but I wanted to give you the history.
So when I first heard all of this, I had District 10 envy because District 10 is Pennsylvania, and I thought, fuck, pardon me. Shoot.
Can we swear on this?
You can swear, yeah. Oh. I thought, fuck, that's great for District 10. They're going to get all these thousands of members, whatever. But then I thought, okay, well, we could translate that kind of thinking into something that's meaningful for us in Western and Northern Canada. Like we aren't a, there's different unions in education here. Like it's not an education thing, but how can we translate that into something that's meaningful in District 3? And we've had a little bit of conversations about that, but maybe Mariana, you can talk about what we're trying to do for telecom because of the TELUS folks with, you mentioned 1944. And then we did some stuff around mining because mining and critical minerals is it is an economic engine already in Western and Northern Canada, but it's, potentially increasingly an economic engine. So,
well, first, as a foreigner, as an American, the labor laws you have here in Canada make it really exciting to be able to think about doing organizing work, just because there's less obstacles in the way in terms of being able to have a card check election where you just need to get a majority of the workers at a workplace signed up on cards, rather than having to get workers to sign cards and then go to election, which I know is still the law in some of the provinces in District 3, but Manitoba just switched
we got Manitoba, BC, and then the federal jurisdiction are all
Right.
card check
Exactly.
organizing, which is most of the districts. So
Right.
And we can still organize in Alberta and Saskatchewan. We just have that extra
Absolutely.
staff. But
And so looking back at kind of the things that Maria was talking about, how do we find strategic targets in terms of where do we already have strength and density? Where do we see an industry or a sector growing? I think you mentioned mining, and we all know for the transition to a clean economy, we're going to need for copper at least, we need to mine more copper in the next 10 years than in all of human history combined, just to keep up with the demand.
I didn't even know that.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy, right? And that's just copper, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not nickel, it's not lithium, it's not cobalt. Like, and you guys have it all up here. And we're a strong mining union. We've been saying we're the biggest mining union in North America because it's true, and I think it's especially true in District 3. And so I think mining is a nice opportunity for organizing, especially given the strength of our existing locals and the enthusiasm of our mining members in terms of growing the sector and knowing their sector so well, and just being really excellent spokespeople about the differences between what it is to be a union miner versus a non-union miner. Lots of them have been non-union miners and can really communicate the difference to people. With 1944, who's taken a hit in their membership with jobs being outsourced, jobs being contracted out. It's really nice to see them taking this so seriously about where can we really grow and regain our strength in our membership. And so, the process we've been taking part of with the local has been looking at these different factors. I don't think I'm going to publicly say where we're going, but, I think it's looking at what do our members already know how to do? Who can they really speak to best? Who can they communicate to best? Because the organizing department, we have kind of the method of doing it. We have our organizing model. We have the processes we use to pick strategic targets. But what really matters is like finding people who can go speak to workers and help them see the difference and make them want to make the change for themselves. And so I think it's the most important part for making our plan work in terms of having steelworker members who are willing to and excited about growing the union, helping out other workers, and really being able to just talk about what it is to have a union contract, to have a steelworker contract, and to have the kind of security that a union contract brings.
Yeah, I mean, what we say a lot to our member organizers, right, is that organizing is both a science and an art. And our department brings the data, the research, the tools, that science piece of it that we bring to the table as organizers. What our members bring is the art. They bring such art form by talking to non-union workers about everything that Mariana just spoke about. And they do it in their way. And so we are best when we combine that art and that science. And so we are thrilled to be able to work with locals, members, or, sub-districts, whoever, who want to bring that art form to it. We do it best when we're together.
Yeah, no, I really, that I've been around a while in the union, but just recently the sort of the talking to members in the sector that they're in, like the Starbucks thing is really like, I cannot relate to not that I can't relate, like I understand what they're saying, but they don't relate to me when I'm talking to the workers at Starbucks. And we really need members to communicate with that group. I mean, and that's, didn't want to get into Starbucks organization, but that really, it struck me like it's there is a real disconnect when you're not, like you don't have common work experience, you don't have common life experience, you don't have common
language.
Community
you don't have common
experience.
language.
It's so hard to relate, and it's so much easier when people are from the same industry, from the same sector, from the same community to be able to talk to each other. I did want to just ask a little bit about. And I know this isn't related to District 3, but I think it's exciting that the work that's been done by the steelworkers to organize in the South. And I know, like folks know, the South is like, it's like Alberta, but worse in terms of an environment that's friendly to unions, and a lot worse, I think. So maybe just talk a little bit about how the steelworkers have been able to make some inroads in organizing in the South, which I think a lot of people thought was like, it's like really tough, right? And so,
yeah, thanks for asking about that. As manufacturing and industry was onshoring again in the United States, they onshored and came back into the country and located in areas that would benefit them the most. And in the United States, that area was the South, right? We have in the U.S. Historic states that are called right to work. Stupid name, but that's what they call it, right? In those right to work states, there is the union density in them are often very, very low. And because there's not, people often think, they can't organize if they're in a right to work state. It's absolutely not true, but that's what they believe. So, when companies, our own companies or our own competitive companies in our own sectors were onshoring back into the U.S., they went to the South. They went to the South where politicians were more friendly. There was a lack of understanding or knowledge about unions because of right to work laws where density was so low. They didn't really know anything about it. And quite honestly, since we're on the Steelworker podcast, it's because they could abuse Black and brown people. This is indentured servitude in many of those places. I'll call it that. And I literally mean indentured servitude because there's a lot of corporations who are taking advantage of the lax laws down there. And so you've got formerly incarcerated folks that are living in halfway houses that are held hostage by the employer for them to work because if they don't have employment, they can't stay in the their homes and have to go back to incarceration. There's all sorts of things that are down there that when you think about historic South, say, oh, we got rid of all of that. It's absolutely not true. It just now takes the form of workers, low-wage workers, being Black and brown, working for multinational corporations who are taking advantage of them. So not only do we have to be there because that's where our companies and the sectors and manufacturing have moved and are continuing to move, but we have to be there because if we abandon those workers, right, there's what do we leave them to? This committed life of just institutionalized slavery. So we can't be about that. So there's two reasons, and both of those are there. But what we found is that if we approach it strategically, and if we approach it using a model that incorporates community building, that incorporates ally building, that incorporates making sure we find the right people, organizers to be there, the right members to be there talking to those workers, we can do it. Now, it's not easy. So when we talk about working class heroes, I think about all these workers who put their lives on the line to try to bring a union to their workplace. We have had many campaigns in the South. We're happy to say that we've won several of them. I will mention one campaign in particular, which is Bluebird Bus Company in Georgia and in Middle Georgia. And that was a place, that company had been around for 100 years. It was created by a family who opened it up to build school buses for the region, and then they grew. But The workers they recruited were agricultural workers out of the peach orchards that were there. They recruited, right, the agricultural workers, 99.9% Black, paid low wages, paid higher than the agricultural industry, but they brought them in there. They were good jobs at the beginning. The problem is that they never kept up. 90 years later, they're still paying poverty wages and everything else around them has increased. But we were able to win that victory by doing the things that we talked about. We were there for over 2 years, slowly building, slowly getting to know the workers, making sure that we were doing it right and not just going down there, passing out cards, putting workers' lives at risk with a union, trying to do a union without a plan. And so for us, what we've done in the South is taken a model that we've described here for our industries, our employers, and making sure that as we pick the targets in them, they're often our industry, our employers, right? Making sure that we do it right. And so in the South, since we've been implementing kind of the pyramid model, we've won 1,500 workers in Bluebird. We've won 300 workers at Kumho Tire, right? And so we've won in lots of these places that historically people have told us that are horrible to organize in. I'm not saying that it isn't, but I think if you approach it right, and it's winnable, it's eminently winnable. And it was the largest industrial organizing win with predominantly African Americans in over 30 years in the South. So it was a huge deal. And then UAW came in and did Chattanooga right afterwards, which was the largest in the South in decades. But what they didn't talk about there is that at that Chattanooga UAW win, it was their third election, 3 attempts. They had neutrality with the employer, and it still took them 3 times. To win it. Here at Bluebird, they fought like crazy. They fired people. We had issues with them, and yet those workers, because we had done it right, had a better chance of winning, and that was our objective. And now they're in their first contract. Some workers, because of that first contract, got a 40 to 47% pay raise. It's massive. It's life-changing. It's not $1. It's 40% more than what they make. And some of those members said it is absolutely life-changing. And if we do it right, then that's what we're able to provide.
And right takes time, right? I get that out of the, and we're all impatient. Like I'm impatient. Like I want to grow the union tomorrow and the next day. But it's like what I get out of that is like some of this takes time. Like, and we got to do the work and do it right if we're going to make it sustainable and life-changing and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to like build off of what Maria was saying about community building, and particularly in the South, these companies are coming in and getting all these incentives from communities, from towns, from states to come in, and they get,
to bring jobs.
To create jobs. They never create quite as many jobs as they say they will.
Or as good as they say they're going to be.
And there's no accountability mechanisms to keep them to their word. And so these communities are really being affected by all these employers coming in to make all these good jobs, undefined what good is. And, we're working in a county in South Carolina, the poorest county in South Carolina, which is already a pretty poor state. And the school district is out of millions of dollars because of a property tax abatement for a tire company that hasn't created as many jobs as it said it would.
And doesn't need the money.
It doesn't need the money. So, when we go in and help workers organize a union, our goal isn't just to help them win their union election. It's to help them build something so they can negotiate a good contract. And so that there's a structure for them to work through to keep working conditions good. And so one of the reasons why it's slow in the South is because we're working with communities, and we know we can't just swoop in and say, like, this is the way you guys should do things in the South, because number one, that doesn't work. Number two, they don't want to hear it from us, right? And so it's really taking the work to look at like where the community needs are, and the community is full of workers, right? Like these aren't two separate entities that we're talking about, and really think about, just like we do in any organizing campaign, what are the issues that matter most to people? How do we work together to solve them? And how do they really solve it themselves, with a structure that we help them figure out, because that's our job as organizers, to help people organize themselves into the sorts of structures and organizations that they can improve working, living conditions.
Just to dovetail on that, because we needed to do everything that Mariana was saying, and we were finding it difficult to find well-established community organizations, our union took it upon ourselves to help create Chester County Worker Empowerment Center, along with some other coalition partners. Mm-hmm. And that's the venue and avenue that we're using to talk to workers through, because it's worker empowerment. We've recruited different community groups and individuals who are well known within that community, leaders, et cetera, to come in and help us figure out all of this work. And that's also why it takes so long.
Speaking of taking so long, we are going to try to wrap. No. We're going to try to wrap this up because we're trying to keep these in digestible podcast lengths. But I know you could both talk about organizing for long stretches of time, and it would be very interesting. And it is very interesting. But we are going to try to wrap up. I do want to say I really appreciate. First that you're here in District 3 again, we've been doing a lot with the International Organizing Department in District 3, and hoping to continue to do more. So thank you for being here. Thank you for working with us on organizing, and thank you for being on the podcast for sure. And I'll just sort of, for in District 3, betterworknow.ca is our kind of organizing website if folks are interested in that. And I'll let you say one quick last closing comment if you want about organizing, starting with you, or about the district, or about what we're doing, just whatever you want to say about.
Oh, it's my favorite district in Western Canada.
Excellent.
Bar
this
none.
This is the biggest steelworker podcast in Western Canada too. Did you know that?
Oh, no, yeah. No, I didn't. What? No, I would say, for the folks who are listening and who are like, oh, maybe I'm kind of interested in organizing, there are avenues to do it. And we're always happy to come to District 3 and help educate members and put together a plan and really work hand in hand so people can do this work if it appeals to them. It is literally what we look forward to most. So don't be shy.
Great.
Yeah, ditto on that. But really, Scott, thanks so much for having us. We love trying to strategize and trying to figure out what fits best. There's no one model that fits best, and thrilled to be working in District 3. Can't thank you enough for inviting us in here and allowing us to work with our locals and our members. And we're so looking forward to being able to build worker power here.
Awesome. Yeah, I can be stubborn. Maria convinced me that strategic organizing and the pyramid and all that is the way to go, and I'm sold. And so kudos to you for all the work, both of you, for all the work that you do. It is very inspiring. I do. Other than the Ben Davis's reports that have pictures, my favorite report at the International Executive Board is the organizing report.
Oh, that's so nice to hear.
Ben has pictures.
We can add pictures.
Oh, we'll have pictures.
But it's that's my two favorite reports. So anyway, thank you everyone for listening to the Strong as Steel podcast. Thank you, Maria and Mariana, for joining us. To everyone who's listening, help us out organizing if you can. If you're a member and interested in organizing, talk to your staff rep. We'll see if we can, get out there and get you into some education and see how you can help us help other workers, help us grow the union, and help us build power for the United Steelworkers. Thanks again. It's the Strong as Steel podcast. D3 columns at usw.ca if you have any feedback, and follow us on social media at USW District 3.